The sun blazes mercilessly overhead, its fury turning sand into a scorching furnace that reaches 120 degrees Fahrenheit. In the shade, if you can find any, your modern camping gear has failed. Your high-tech cooling vest is soaked through with sweat. Your battery-powered fan died hours ago. Yet somehow, impossibly, an entire civilization once thrived in this hellscape for over 4,000 years. Picture this: thousands of desert nomads sleeping peacefully through nights when the temperature never drops below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Children playing comfortably, while modern tourists collapse from heat exhaustion after minutes. Families gathering around fires, yes, fires, in 115 degrees Fahrenheit heat, drinking steaming hot tea, and somehow staying cooler than you in your air-conditioned hotel room. The Bedouin people of the Arabian Peninsula didn't just survive these conditions, they mastered them so completely that scientists are still baffled today. While we rely on energy-guzzling air conditioners that pump out greenhouse gases, these ancient nomads developed cooling systems so sophisticated that NASA researchers are studying them for space missions. How did they sleep through furnace-like nights without dying? The answer defies everything we think we know about surviving extreme heat. In 2019, researchers at the University of Ottawa's Thermal Ergonomics Laboratory made a discovery that shocked the scientific community. Dr. Sean Notley and his team were studying heat stress in extreme environments when they stumbled upon historical accounts that seemed impossible. Desert nomads regularly sleeping in temperatures that would kill modern humans within hours. The team decided to test ancient Bedouin techniques using state-of-the-art thermal imaging and metabolic monitoring equipment. What they found contradicted decades of thermal regulation science. Subjects following traditional Bedouin methods maintained core body temperatures of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, while ambient temperatures soared to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, conditions that typically cause fatal hyperthermia within 90 minutes. Even more shocking, these techniques were 40% more effective than modern cooling technologies. While participants using battery-powered cooling vests showed dangerous temperature spikes after just 45 minutes, those following 4,000-year-old Bedouin methods remained comfortable for over 6 hours straight. We had to recalibrate our instruments 3 times, admits Dr. Notley. The data seemed impossible by today's standards. The implications were staggering. Modern desert survival manuals recommend immediate evacuation when temperatures exceed 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet these ancient peoples had built entire civilizations in regions where such temperatures were normal for 8 months of the year. The research team realized they had uncovered something extraordinary, a complete understanding of human thermal regulation that modern science had somehow forgotten. For over 4,000 years, from approximately 2000 BCE to the early 20th century, the Bedouin tribes dominated the Arabian Peninsula's most unforgiving landscapes. We're talking about roughly 1.4 million square miles of desert, where summer temperatures routinely exceeded 115 degrees Fahrenheit, with ground temperatures reaching 140 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cause third-degree burns in seconds. This wasn't a small population struggling to survive. Historical records suggest that at their peak, over 3 million Bedouin nomads called these deserts home, moving across vast territories with herds of camels, goats, and sheep. They established trade routes spanning thousands of miles, built temporary settlements, and raised families in conditions that would challenge modern military survival experts, equipped with the latest technology. Consider the mathematical impossibility of their situation. The human body begins experiencing heat exhaustion at 104 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature and heat stroke at 106 degrees Fahrenheit. In environments above 95 degrees Fahrenheit, with high humidity, or 105 degrees Fahrenheit in dry conditions, the body's natural cooling mechanisms, sweating and heat radiation, become inadequate. Death typically occurs within 2 to 4 hours without intervention. Yet Bedouin children grew up playing in sand that could literally cook an egg. Pregnant women carried babies to term through summers where nighttime temperatures never dropped below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Elders lived well into their 70s and 80s, despite spending their entire lives in conditions that modern medicine considers lethal. They had no refrigeration, no electric fans, no ice, no air conditioning, none of the technologies we consider essential for surviving extreme heat. No lightweight synthetic fabrics, no modern understanding of electrolyte replacement, no emergency medical services. Their tools were limited to what they could carry on camelback: natural materials, traditional knowledge, and techniques passed down through generations. The stakes couldn't have been higher. A single mistake in desert survival meant death, not just for individuals, but potentially for entire family groups. Yet somehow, these people didn't just survive. They created one of history's most successful nomadic civilizations. The first shock came when researchers discovered what seemed like the worst possible survival advice. Bedouins wore black clothing in blazing desert heat. Every modern survival manual says wear light colors to reflect heat. Yet here were people thriving in head-to-toe black robes when temperatures hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Dr. Shkolnik of Tel Aviv University decided to test this scientifically. His team monitored volunteers wearing different clothing colors in controlled desert conditions. The results were stunning. People in loose black clothing stayed 2 to 3 degrees cooler than those in white, and a full 8 degrees cooler than those in tight-fitting, light-colored clothes. Here's the physics that took scientists decades to understand. Black fabric absorbs heat from both the sun and your body, but when worn loose, it creates a powerful convection current. The black material heats the air trapped between fabric and skin, causing it to rise rapidly and escape through the top of the garment. This creates a continuous updraft that pulls cooler air in from the bottom, essentially turning your clothing into a personal cooling system. The effect is like wearing a portable chimney. Fresh air constantly flows in around your ankles and wrists, travels up your body, absorbs heat, and exits at your neck and sleeves. Meanwhile, the black outer layer shields your skin from direct solar radiation, providing better UV protection than white fabric. But clothing was just the beginning. Bedouins positioned their sleeping areas on top of sand dunes, not in valleys where most people would seek shelter. Modern thermal imaging reveals why. Even at night, sand radiates heat for hours after sunset. Valley floors can be 15 to 20 degrees hotter than dune tops, where constant wind flow creates natural air conditioning. They also perfected the timing of their activities with mathematical precision. Travel occurred exclusively between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m., when temperatures dropped to merely 85 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. During peak heat hours, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., they remained completely motionless in shade, reducing metabolic heat production by up to 40%. Their water storage system involved porous clay vessels that utilized evaporative cooling. As water slowly seeped through the clay walls and evaporated, it cooled the remaining water inside by 10 to 15 degrees below ambient temperature, creating naturally chilled drinking water without ice. But this was nothing compared to what researchers discovered about their shelter systems. The real genius was hidden beneath the surface. Here's where it gets sophisticated. Bedouins didn't just adapt to the desert, they engineered it. What looked like simple temporary shelters were actually complex thermal management systems that would impress modern HVAC engineers. Their tent design utilized principles of fluid dynamics that weren't formally discovered by science until the 1800s. The traditional black goat hair tent wasn't just weatherproof, it was a masterpiece of passive cooling engineering. The fabric's loose weave allowed hot air to escape while blocking 95% of solar radiation. But the real innovation was in the tent's shape and anchoring system. Bedouin tents were always rectangular, never square, with specific dimensional ratios, roughly 3 to 2 length to width. This wasn't arbitrary, it creates optimal airflow patterns. The tent's low profile, barely 6 feet high, and loose sides created a venturi effect, where wind hitting the tent accelerated as it flowed underneath, creating powerful cross-ventilation that could lower internal temperatures by 20 to 25 degrees. The tent's guy ropes weren't just for stability, they were precisely positioned to channel airflow. By adjusting rope tension and anchor points, Bedouins could literally tune their shelters like musical instruments, optimizing air circulation for different wind conditions and times of day. Underground, they created sophisticated thermal management systems that modern archaeologists are still discovering. Using their intimate knowledge of desert geology, Bedouins identified locations where they could dig shallow cooling chambers, depressions in the sand that stayed 15 to 20 degrees cooler than surface temperatures due to thermal mass and ground coupling effects. These sleep wells were lined with specific types of stones that absorbed heat during the day and slowly released it after sunset, creating comfortable sleeping temperatures even when surface sand remained scorching hot. The positioning wasn't random. These chambers were always dug on the north side of dunes, where they received maximum shade and minimum solar heating. But perhaps most ingeniously, they understood thermal layering in ways that anticipated modern spacesuit technology. Bedouins wore up to 4 layers of clothing, each with specific thermal properties. The outer layer was always dark to absorb and dissipate heat. The second layer was lighter colored and loose-fitting to create insulating air gaps. Inner layers were made from specific animal fibers that wickeded moisture while maintaining insulation properties. They even developed personal cooling devices centuries before electric fans. The traditional head wrap wasn't just sun protection, it was engineered to create airflow around the head and neck, where critical temperature regulation occurs. By dampening the inner layer with small amounts of precious water, they created evaporative cooling that could lower head temperature by 8 to 10 degrees. Their mathematical precision extended to camp layout. Bedouin encampments followed strict geometric patterns that optimized wind flow through the entire settlement. Tents were positioned in specific relationships to create venturi effects and thermal chimneys, ensuring that the entire community benefited from enhanced cooling. Dr. Hassan al-Rashid of the American University of Sharjah spent 3 years mapping these patterns using computational fluid dynamics. His conclusion: these people understood advanced thermodynamics and fluid mechanics centuries before these sciences existed. Their knowledge was encoded in cultural practices that modern engineers are still trying to fully comprehend. The masterpiece discovery came in 2021 when researchers found something extraordinary hidden in historical accounts. Bedouins had developed a sophisticated understanding of human circadian thermal regulation that surpassed modern medical knowledge. Dr. Maria Santos, a chronobiologist at Johns Hopkins, was analyzing ancient texts when she found detailed descriptions of sleep timing, body positioning, and temperature management that perfectly aligned with cutting-edge research on human thermal cycles. The Bedouins had somehow discovered that core body temperature naturally fluctuates by 2 to 3 degrees throughout a 24-hour cycle, and they had engineered their entire lifestyle around these micro changes. They understood that human body temperature reaches its lowest point around 4 a.m., exactly when they scheduled their deepest sleep phases. But here's what stunned researchers. They had identified specific body positions that enhanced natural cooling by up to 30%. Traditional Bedouin sleeping posture involved lying on the left side with arms and legs positioned to maximize blood flow to extremities, where heat dissipation is most efficient. Even more remarkable was their group sleeping arrangements. Families didn't sleep randomly. They arranged themselves in specific patterns that created microclimates within their shelters. Adults with higher metabolic heat production slept on the perimeter, while children and elderly members occupied the cooler center positions. This wasn't just cultural tradition, it was precision thermal engineering. The knowledge required to develop these systems was staggering. Bedouin elders had to understand wind patterns, thermal conductivity of different materials, human physiology, and desert geology. They needed to predict weather changes, identify optimal camping locations, and coordinate complex group behaviors that kept entire tribes alive in lethal conditions. This knowledge wasn't written down. It was transmitted through generations via apprenticeship systems more rigorous than modern professional training. Young Bedouins spent 15 to 20 years learning to read the desert's thermal patterns, memorizing hundreds of weather signs, and mastering the precise techniques required for survival. The community cooperation required was extraordinary. Everyone had to follow thermal discipline perfectly. One person's mistake could create heat buildup that affected the entire group. During extreme heat events, tribes would implement coordinated cooling protocols involving precise timing of activities, shared water resources, and collective shelter management. Master desert guides could predict temperature changes hours in advance by reading subtle environmental cues. The behavior of insects, the angle of animal tracks in sand, the color of distant mirages. They understood that desert thermal dynamics operate on multiple timescales simultaneously. Hourly fluctuations, daily cycles, seasonal patterns, and multi-year climate variations. Modern survival experts trained for months to handle conditions that Bedouin children navigated instinctively. These ancient people had transformed one of Earth's most hostile environments into a sustainable homeland through knowledge systems of breathtaking sophistication. Today, while we face the climate crisis, these ancient solutions offer hope and urgency. In July 2023, Phoenix, Arizona experienced temperatures above 115 degrees Fahrenheit for 31 consecutive days. The city's electrical grid nearly collapsed as air conditioning. Demand spiked to unprecedented levels. Rolling blackouts left thousands without cooling, leading to over 400 heat-related deaths. Meanwhile, in refugee camps across the Middle East and North Africa, modern emergency shelters routinely fail in extreme heat. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees reports that standard relief tents can reach internal temperatures of 140 degrees Fahrenheit, creating life-threatening conditions for displaced populations. Yet just 50 miles away, some traditional Bedouin communities still maintain comfortable living conditions using 4,000-year-old techniques. NASA's Mars Habitat Research Program is actively studying Bedouin thermal management systems for future planetary missions. The space agency's Dr. Jennifer Williams explains, these ancient techniques work without power, generate zero emissions, and require only locally available materials. That makes them perfect for Mars, and increasingly relevant for Earth. Several pilot projects are already implementing Bedouin-inspired cooling in modern contexts. The city of Seville, Spain has integrated traditional wind catcher designs into new public buildings, reducing air conditioning costs by 60%. Australian Aboriginal communities are combining traditional desert wisdom with modern materials to create efficient cooling systems for remote settlements. But here's the crisis. This knowledge is disappearing faster than Arctic ice. As traditional Bedouin communities urbanize, they're abandoning ancestral techniques for modern air conditioning. UNESCO estimates that within 30 years, most traditional desert survival knowledge will be lost forever. Climate scientists predict that by 2050, over 1.2 billion people will live in regions experiencing regular, extreme heat events. Current cooling infrastructure can't handle this scale, and the energy required would accelerate climate change catastrophically. The irony is devastating. Just as we need this ancient wisdom most desperately, we're letting it vanish. Every elderly Bedouin master who passes away takes irreplaceable thermal engineering knowledge with them. We're facing a race against time to preserve and adapt these techniques before they're lost forever, taking with them humanity's best hope for surviving our heating planet. Think about this for a moment. The next time your air conditioning fails on a hot summer day, you're experiencing just a tiny fraction of what Bedouins managed comfortably for millennia. When your electric bill spikes during heat waves, remember that entire civilizations once thrived without using a single kilowatt of energy for cooling. Here's what you can try tonight. Sleep on your left side with your arms positioned to maximize heat dissipation from your hands and feet. Wear loose, dark-colored pajamas if you have them. Notice how these simple changes affect your comfort. You're experiencing 4,000-year-old technology that could save your life in an emergency. But more importantly, start asking questions. What other ancient knowledge have we dismissed as primitive that might actually be superior to modern solutions? How can we learn from cultures that mastered sustainable living long before sustainability became a buzzword? Share your own experiences with extreme heat survival in the comments. Have you ever tried traditional cooling techniques? What worked? What didn't? Your observations could help researchers preserve and adapt this crucial knowledge. The Bedouins mastered perhaps humanity's greatest challenge, living in harmony with extreme environments, using only natural systems. As our planet heats up and our energy-hungry cooling systems become unsustainable, their ancient wisdom offers us something priceless, a blueprint for survival. The question isn't whether we can learn from the desert masters. The question is whether we'll learn fast enough.